So. Good evening, councillors. Just wanted to advise that hotspots or where if anyone is hotspotting to a personal device, it affects the AV equipment. So if anybody is hotspotting to an Android AP hotspot, please can you turn it off? Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. So to start off the meeting, item agenda number 1, to confirm the minutes of the last meeting on the 17th of May. I move that the minutes of the previous meetings be signed as a correct record. Are there any points of accuracy that anybody would like to raise? Thank you. We will duly sign those. Are there any declarations of interests? There are none. This evening on item 3, there is a member of the public who has a question. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Philip Aylett and invite him to ask his question.
Thank you. I have a brief preamble, if I may. Thank you. I'm Philip Aylett. I'm the chair of the Dacorum Health Action Group. We campaign for better health services for Dacorum. We also believe, incidentally, that the emergency care and specialist hospital should be at a clear central site and not at Watford, but I'm not going to go on about that now. Action Group members have a lot of expertise in construction, finance, planning, and in health service. So we're very pleased indeed that the Health and Dacorum Committee has been retained. It's an important committee. We very much welcome also Councillor Tyndall's pledge to press for fair health funding for Dacorum and for a new modern health facility in the centre of Hemel Hempstead. We look forward to hearing more detail about this. But I'd like to make a few points briefly about Hemel Hospital and its services. You'll be well aware that there are many services here, bowel screening, MRI, cardiology, and so huge range. It's still a busy place. There are still 250,000 patient episodes at Hemel each year. But the future is murky, to say the least. West Herts Trust clinical strategy claims that Hemel will be the centre for planned medical services in the area. Not true. That's not true. Very misleading. Watford General has, as you all know, many more planned medical appointments than Hemel. And we've looked at the figures, and they're not planning to increase them very much in Hemel over the years. So over the years, the dominance of Watford in planned medical appointments will increase. So there's no distinct role for Hemel. Over the years, it will diminish again. So many people from our area, many of them vulnerable elderly, will have to go to Watford. That journey is a long journey. So it's vital that there are good health facilities and hospital facilities in this town and in this borough. There's a problem, though. I've heard from several sources that there are doubts as to whether the current Hemel Hospital site will be retained. This raises a number of serious questions. Firstly, if the Trust decides to close the existing hospital, will the suggested new facility be able to provide the same range of services? Secondly, what would be the location for the new facility, and what about access and parking? And thirdly, how would it be funded? West Herts Trust plans for building on a very difficult Watford site are very expensive and will take money away from Hemel. Just very briefly, we want to be positive though. We put forward a vision for Hemel Hospital, which we hope is going to be looked at seriously. That would mean integrated services, social care, healthcare, and a variety of other things, including voluntary organisations.
I need to ask you bring it to the question.
Thank you. So the question is, very briefly, could the Leader of the Council please give us an update on his statement of 30th of May on hospital funding, and in particular what the Council is going to do to ensure that Dacorum has its fair share of funding? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Aylett. Since taking office a few short months ago, we've been working with our partners, including the Hospital Trust, to discuss how hospital services can be provided in the borough, and importantly, to ensure that the health inequalities are narrowed and we achieve the best services for Dacorum residents. In relation to funding, the breakdown of the funding envelope has not been confirmed. However, we're not resting on our laurels. We want our destiny to be our own hands, and we've recently met with the Chair and Chief Executive of West Hertfordshire Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust to discuss opportunities to co-create a model for health and wellbeing services that can meet the needs of the people of Dacorum now and into the future. We also hope to meet the Chair and Chief Executive of the Integrated Care Board soon to have a similar conversation. This matter remains our priority and we will continue to keep members and residents informed as plans progress and new funding information becomes available.
You're allowed a supplementary question.
I just have one. I think I would be interested to know how you're intending to make sure that the West Herts Trust engage with the council, because in the last year or so, public engagement has been very limited. And previously, the Trust has been unwilling, really, to see Health and Decorum Committee, and that is a sad thing. They need to somehow to be encouraged to come to meet the Health and Decorum Committee and talk about what their plans are publicly. Thank you.
Thank you. We are a new administration with a different approach, and I also believe that the hospital trust has a new administration. And so we met with them yesterday. It was a positive meeting over 2 hours. We couldn't actually come to a great deal because the government are still keeping their cards very close to the chest, and we've still got no details about the money, which unfortunately, because nothing else can be decided without that. So I'm afraid I haven't got a lot of progress to report, but we have engaged and we are talking. And while we're talking, there is every opportunity that we may make progress. And I will come back to as soon as we have more information.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tyndall. Thank you, Mr. Aylett. Item agenda 4, announcements. Firstly, it is with great sadness that I inform you all of the passing away of former County Councillor Ian Laidlaw Dixon. I'd like to say a few words as we came across each other in a variety of guises in life in decorum. He was a dedicated citizen, engaged very much in local activities and in supporting the residents that he served as a councillor, and that he helped as a fellow citizen. This included many years dedicated service as a trustee of Community Action Decorum. He was a very spirited local character. He used to have a Saturday afternoon drink in the Post Office Arms in Boxmoor. And I had many a very enjoyable discussion on local affairs and a few jokes as well with him. And even though we were not united by party affiliation, we certainly enjoyed a good spirit of local service on those occasions. And so I'd like to pass the council's and my sincere condolences on to his partner and family at his passing. Is there anybody else in the chamber who would like to say anything on this sad occasion? Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I never actually worked with Ian, although we did pass in the street when we were delivering leaflets occasionally. He was born in Leighton Buzzard, but he was devoted to Hemel Hempstead, and he was very much involved in voluntary work and voluntary service. He was also a trustee, as Mayor has outlined, of Dens. A particular note was the fact that he was a member of this council for 8 years between 79 to 87, but he was also a county councillor, and through that office he became a member of the police authority and ultimately as chair for 5 years, and he did receive the OBE for his services to the police in 2009. He will be sorely missed, and we extend our best wishes and condolences to his family. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as Councillor Tyndall has said, he was a county councillor here, but he's also a borough councillor from 79 to 87, representing the ward that is now represented by Barbara Wright, Akerfield East. At that time, I was working in Akerfield East, and I think Ian shared the walk with George Scribbins, who just got from Park Drive. I saw regularly during my work with my work didn't bring me into contact with Ian. As you say, after a short break, he went on to be the county councillor for 16 years, including 5 years as chairman of the police authority. In fact, his time in the court here ended the year that I joined, so we were never actually on the council together. But I did serve as a leader of opposition to Julius Parker in the late 90s. Although he wasn't here by then. But he had a very long active life of public service, of not just in councils and as I said, the police authority, but with DENS and community action decorum and many other groups where he led his support wisdom. And I know he only stood down from community action decorum at the last AGM. So he was active almost right to the end. And with his contribution to civic life across the Coram is very significant.
So, Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My memories of Ian are on the Warners End Neighbourhood Association Committee, which he sat on as the local county councillor. He will be remembered on it for the financial acumen that he brought to the meetings. Condolences and thoughts are with Julia and the family.
Councillor Pesh.
Don't have to do anything. Right, firstly, could I please thank you on behalf of Julia, Ian's partner, who is here with us this evening, and his daughter Rebecca, for your kind words and thoughts. For those of you that didn't know Ian, he was born in Leighton Buzzard, where his parents had settled after meeting and marrying in Prague and then fleeing to the UK. Yeah, at the start of World War II. He attended Ashton School and then later studied politics at Sussex University and went on to work as a manager for BT. I knew and worked with Ian for many years. I remember our first meeting well in the late 70s while canvassing for the 1979 local elections when he won, as Andrew said, Adeyfield East along with George Scribbins, and remained there for 8 years. He later served as a Herts County councillor, in which time he was appointed to the police authority and served as a chair for 5 years and supported the establishment of neighbourhood policing. He was awarded an OBE in 2010. Locally, during the last 12 years, he was a member of the board of the Community Action Decorum and DENS, where he was appreciated for his insight, knowledge and understanding of the bodies he served on. Ian was a member of the local Labour Party for almost 50 years, having joined in 1974 when Harold Wilson was Prime Minister. Locally, he had various positions, including the CLP chair, most importantly, our local election agent for many years, still helping with advice and support until his death just after this May's elections. Ian was an avid reader and enjoyed visiting art galleries and the theatre, and I know recently travelling. In fact, a few years ago, I teased him about going on cruises now. Ian was a special person, kind, caring, patient and understanding. In fact, he cared right up to his death from a very rare form of cancer by donating his body to medical research. Many of us owe much to the dedication and hard work of Ian as he tried to improve people's lives and will be greatly missed by all those lives he touched. Finally, I know Julia would like me to inform you of the celebration of Ian's life that is to be held on Friday, the 28th of July, at 1:30 for a 2 o'clock start at Warners End Community Centre. As Ian always enjoyed colourful clothes when not in a formal setting, if anybody comes, please feel you can dress casually and as colourful as you like. red is always welcome. If you are coming though, Julia would really appreciate a note by the end of next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doris? Doris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reference has been made to Ian's involvement with Community Action Decorum. I just want to say a couple of words because it was my privilege to work with him in the last year or so, where he chaired Hertfordshire Independent Translation Services, which was a trading offshoot of CAD. And during that time, and prior to that time, during his period as chairmanship, he had actually developed HITS, as it's known now, into a formidable translation service that is recognised not only across the borough, but across the county and wider still. And as a result of that, he actually made HITS a very profitable organisation, as I say, which is highly respected, but contributed hugely to the benefit of Community Action Decorum, which has gone on in its own way to actually undertake a range of activities and support from across the borough. And for that, both in terms of HITS and in terms of CAD, we should be very grateful and we should remember Ian in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your kind words. Clearly a model we can all follow. I'd like to call on everybody to hold a minute's silence in Ian's memory. Thank you all. In other announcements, I just wanted to highlight a couple of civic events that have happened in the past month. My colleague Councillor Link attended Armed Forces Day. I think many of the people in this chamber were also there, and I just thought it was appropriate that we pass on our thanks for all of the hard work that Dacorum Borough staff put into making that such a successful and vibrant occasion. We've also had the Windrush commemoration, 75th anniversary, and again, there have been a series of very well-run events in the borough that the borough staff should be commended for. This is an issue that, given it's been in the news, and we're aware that still up to 30% of applicants to the Windrush Fund are waiting to hear the outcome of their applications, we as a borough need to be mindful of. I was very struck by how many of the members of this chamber attended, which was fantastic, but I was also struck that there wasn't such an impressive attendance by the black and minority ethnic communities, of which there are extensive members in the borough. So as a result of meetings with BME representatives at the Windrush event, we're going to be working on trying to engage much more successfully with our communities in the borough, and next year, hopefully, we will get an even more vibrant and engaged event. Thank you. Any announcements by the Chief Executive? There are none. Announcements by group leaders. Councillor Tyndall.
Thank you. If I could give the apologies as Councillor Muttershead, please.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, tender apologies on behalf of Councillor Anderson, Barradell and Elliott.
Councillor Pesh.
No, nobody. We're all here.
I'll now invite speakers to provide their reports for the various portfolios, starting with Councillor Tyndall as Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The one major issue that I wanted to report on was the hospital meeting, which I've already done through the public question, so I have nothing further to report. Happy to take questions.
Do we have any questions of Councillor Tyndall? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following on from the question from Mr. Elliott and the answer from the leader, previously this council has supported cross-party the view of the campaign group that the best provision for hospital provision within Dacorum, or for the benefit of Dacorum residents, would be on a cleared site and not the refurbishment of Watford Hospital is currently proposed. Accepting that that argument is probably lost, can the leader confirm that A, this council's policy has changed, and therefore it is no longer Dacorum's policy that the best outcome of healthcare for our residents is a new purpose-built hospital, and we accept that the likely outcome is that we won't get the best outcome for our communities?
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I actually haven't given up yet. My own personal preference has always been for a new hospital. However, I also always recognised that the money was going to play a significant part in the process. And with the government shilly-shallying delaying, I think the cost has gone up about 2.5-fold, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years. At the moment, we have an announcement that the plans of the hospital group will be funded, but we have no more detail than that. Also, we can't really work out a strategy until we have some idea of what is being proposed and what is agreed. I would love to see something in writing, but I've yet to see it. So as soon as I welcome the offer to work cross-party, as soon as I have something definite, I will be in touch with the other group leaders in order to see where we are.
Would you like to follow up at all? Thank you. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to corporate and commercial services. Councillor Symington.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, everyone, I just wanted to explain exactly what our group has decided to do. So we've realigned the portfolio holders with the strategic directorates. So I'm going to be speaking to corporate and commercial services. And I'm going to take financial services as the first item. So just really to highlight and just also to say that a lot of my report obviously relates to activities that have happened since the previous council meeting, which was in March, and therefore the things that we're covering cover both periods and are ongoing. So just to say that the draft 2022-23 financial statements have been published. They're waiting the external auditors, but they should be reviewed this month. We've also published the 2021-22 external auditors annual report, and that outlined no risks of significant weakness in the council's financial stability, governance, or in particularly the economy, efficiency and effectiveness. So take that as good news, and thank you to the previous administration. So going forward, obviously we've already just finished Q1 and the reporting cycle is underway. That Q1 report will be coming, report back to members in September. So the second service I wanted to talk about was revenue and benefits, to say that the 2023 annual council tax billing cycle has been successfully implemented and the collection process is already underway for 23-24. They've set up as a team of officers set up from across the council to administer the government's energy support payments for residents who did not receive them automatically. And over 100,000 has already been paid out to date. Yeah, and the service has been, so basically the Revenue Amendment Service has successfully completed the financial year end collections. And just to give you the numbers for that, so we've collected council tax for 67,000 residents and over 4,400 business rate payers. So the second area that covers under this portfolio is legal and democratic services. So this area covered the local elections, which was successfully conducted on the 4th of May. Over 45,000 ballot papers were verified and counted across all borough and parish areas. And we've used over 400 staff were employed to assist. So it was a huge operation. Feedback forms were sent to all the staff, group leaders and election agents to gain an understanding of what went well and enable improvements to be assessed for the future. The election teams also delivered 2 successful new member induction days, followed by the annual council and mayor-making ceremony. And both these teams have been recognised for their work on the election through the annual Staff Recognition Awards, which were held at Shendish Manor, and they were awarded the Chief Executive's commendation. The Legal Services team continues to represent the council in various courts and tribunals on a regular basis, and in early June, successfully prosecuted an individual for fly tipping offences. And it's hoped that the successful completion of this case will deter others from similar actions. Commercial development, a key part of the strategy. So proposals have been developed to increase parking tariffs and to amend car parking policies. The proposals have already been presented to the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee and will be going to Cabinet on the 18th of July. The proposals include tariff increases to reflect inflation and cost of service delivery, and the introduction of a more consistent application of charging policies across council car parks. As also part of the commercial strategy, proposals have been submitted to Cabinet, or were submitted to Cabinet in June, for a strategic asset review. It is many years since the Council's Housing Revenue Account and General Fund assets were reviewed, and officers from across the Council will work together to undertake a series of reviews to consider the strategic opportunities for development and repurposing of all these assets, in particular to support placemaking, housing, regeneration and commercial objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Symington. Councillor Whitelow.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Symington, do you recognise that charging for parking in Gadebridge Park, in Canal Fields and other places where there's been considerable investment in leisure play facilities, that this could negatively impact usage across a broad spectrum of residents using the facilities or trying to? I mean, for example, we have the Splash Park, which is a great free facility at the moment. We have the bowling greens. We have the health walks, where 80 or 90 local residents come there to park free, so that they can go on health walks. We have UA3 who use our car park there to go off on their coach trips, their jaunts. All of these would be effective. And can I suggest that what is being proposed is more of a pay-to-play strategy than a thought-through, logical and coherent parking fee increase strategy? Could I have your comments, please?
Councillor Symington.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Councillor Whitelow, for your comments. I'm absolutely taken on board, and that is why the Council is engaging in an extensive consultation process with all stakeholders and all users of car parks to ascertain the effects of the policies that are being proposed. None of them are, sorry, all these policies are for consultation. absolutely appreciate that different people are affected differently from the changes in charging policies, and all that needs to be taken into consideration when assessing the impact.
Did you have any follow-up question? No. Thank you. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to ask the portfolio holder, has the impact of the proposed parking charge increase on retailers recovering from the impact of COVID restrictions and facing the challenge of online retail been considered?
Councillor Symington.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Guest. I'd like to reassure you that the impact on all stakeholders will be considered. We all need to take into account that we are recovering from the COVID pandemic, and the cost of we're not recovering from the cost of living crisis. We are in a cost of living crisis, and it's not getting any better. We're also in a high inflationary environment, and inflation is not falling. Council's costs and everybody's costs are rising. All those things are pertinent to how we move forward and what's decided. And I can absolutely give you my reassurance that everything will be considered. But I appreciate that you probably, as a retailer yourself or linked to the retail sector, will be very concerned about this. And I think it's important that we engage with retailers such as yourself. The move to online shopping has very clearly affected behaviours around car parks and car park usage. And I think the car parking strategy, which I know we are looking at today, or it's being picked out, the questions are being picked out in isolation, but actually it needs to be looked at holistically with all the other policies that the council is going to be looking at, in particular placemaking, which is going to be key to what our communities look like, attracting people into them and hoping and getting them to come to our town and village centres, however that might be, whether it be by car, by bus, walking or by cycling. And that's what we're looking to broaden out the policy so that all these aspects are included in it. And absolutely, retailers are a key stakeholder in that.
Councillor Mitchell.
Hello, I'm the councillor.
Apologies, yes, Councillor Guest, yes, you have a supplementary.
I do indeed, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yes, the member services have given instructions about the use of the microphones. All you have to do is switch on your microphone to flag up that you want to ask a question and leave it on until your whole interaction, including supplementary questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And in the consultation, will residents specify whether they are individuals or businesses so that the council can gauge the potential impact of a parking charge increase on retailers?
Councillor Symington.
Yes, thank you for that question. It was raised at the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and confirmation was given by the officer attending that that question will be included in the consultation. So I reiterate that in this public forum.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Hello, I'm the councillor for Gaybridge, so my residents are greatly impacted by this change if there was a charge in Gaybridge Park because it is our local park. Also, the local residents are going to be greatly impacted if people choose not to pay the charges and park in the local street. So I wanted to raise that concern because my residents are concerned about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Symington.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you very much for that feedback. I'm aware of the impact. You know, obviously some of these are known impacts, and we can be aware of them and anticipate them in advance. But some of them will come through in the consultation, and that's why it's so important that we engage with everybody, whether they be users, whether they be retailers. Anybody who might be impacted by the use of the car park, whether it be a leisure facility, as I said, or a town centre facility. Just to expand on the issue of displacement, which is what I think what you're talking about when car parking charges are changed. I'm sure lots of you have received, as I do, requests for controlled parking zones. And we have really quite a large number of those requests outstanding. We also have a lot of requests for much better enforcement. And I think these are the things that it's not just about changing the parking system, it's about looking at holistically and delivering for residents what they want. So what a lot of residents want is better enforcement, and they want to, for many of them, they also want controlled parking zones. Maybe not appropriate in your particular ward and with this area, but I just wanted to make the wider point. And as I said, those of you who have been councillors for a while will be, no doubt, have had residents asking for controlled parking zones, and there's a 10-year backlog on those at the moment. So there's a lot of things to consider in all this, and I hope it will come out in a very extensive consultation.
Thank you, Councillor Symington. Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor Mitchell?
Anyway, I was just going to say that controlled parking zones isn't really relevant in the area. The residents are only of the nearby roads, which are just across the road from Leighton Buzzard Road, are only impacted when there's a big event on. They don't mind when there's a big event, that's okay. But if the free parking goes from the free car park in Guybridge Park...
Sorry, Councillor Mitchell, it's meant to be a question.
Oh, sorry.
And there are other
Okay.
people waiting to ask
Sorry.
questions, so if you can
I'm
be
used
to the
so,
point.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just responding to... It's not
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say, I did recognise in my answer that part of my answer was not relevant just to you, so I was speaking to the wider council about the controlled parking zones, because displacement parking is an issue for everyone, not just in Gadebridge, potentially.
So I think Councillor Burney, the system has you next, although I think Councillor Binder was before you. You don't mind, Councillor Burney, then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Binder. Can the portfolio, changing the subject somewhat, can the portfolio holder inform the council of the cost of this strategic review? And in view of the pressures on the council's budget, what is the main driver of this cost? And are we sure that it will not expand in price?
Councillor Symington.
Councillor Burney, I don't want to be quoted to give you an exact figure, but because I know that it was in the papers for the Financial Resources meeting, so I can send you those. My memory is that it's an additional 100,000, give or take, or 115. You're going to correct me, I know, because you're looking at it and you have that advantage on me.
We need to be brief if
I think the figure is £500,000, actually.
So we'll take that as your supplementary, Councillor Burney?
I think that is a net increase on what's already budgeted from the previous administration for this work.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Symington. If you're happy with that, Councillor Burney, we can squeeze in Councillor Binder briefly.
Provided that the figure is circulated, Mr. Mayor.
So
I'm happy
you'll
to
get back.
circulate the figure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think it'd be unfair on Councillor Binder not to allow him to ask his question if it's quick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been reported that the reason behind this is inflation. So if this goes ahead, I'm assuming that there will be a plan, sorry, I'm back to car parking, that to scrap it when inflation comes down. And I'd also like to ask the portfolio holder if Zhang has been considered. We have had a continuing spate of reports with regards erosion of the Chiltern beachwoods and restricting people's access to large open green spaces surely is not consistent with trying to do the best we can to...
Can we bring it to a question, please?
That was the question. I'd just like some reassurance that those concerns are being considered. And in the words of a rather famous tennis player, my last question is, you can be serious.
Sorry, Councillor Binder, it's meant to be one question. It seems like this has sort of become quite protracted. Councillor Symington.
Yeah, so I missed the third of the three questions. The first one is about inflation. So the thing about inflation is it gets embedded. So even when inflation is down, unless inflation actually becomes a negative value, prices don't actually fall. They just don't rise as fast. So, that's the answer to that question. So no, I cannot give a commitment that the prices increases will come down if the rate of inflation falls. That would be inconsistent. And the Chiltern Beechwoods, absolutely. So Ashridge are also facing the same problems in terms of, if you're talking about Ashridge, I think you're talking about access to open space. And I think I've already answered that question, that we're having a full consultation on the impact of this, of charging people to access open spaces. There are a lot of other open spaces, sorry, I'm hitting my microphone, that people can access without having to pay to park. And it's quite possible, you know, that, as I said, this will come out in the consultation, what the appropriate balance between raising car parking charges is and charging for publicly owned assets, and encouraging people to take exercise for their well-being and mental health.
Mr. Mayor, if I may make a point of clarification. Most of the questions I've heard so far relate to actions that were commenced in the previous administration and as a result of actions from the administration, particularly the Beechwoods, which to my mind is at least 6 months or a year old. Can I suggest that the members opposite concentrate on asking questions of something that we may be responsible for in the future and not things that they were responsible for before they lost the last election?
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. Right, Councillor Williams.
The questions are related to actions proposed by the new administration which will affect Ballarat going forward. They're not policies implemented by previous administration, and indeed Chiltern Beechwoods is an issue, a national issue beyond the administration's control. But the proposals being put forward by the administration heightened to worsen the issues that they face. Therefore, the questions are relevant and pertinent.
Thank you. We are over time on this item. I've been indulgent with Councillor Binder. I do not propose we have any more discussion on this item when we move on to Housing and Property Services and Councillor Diani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. I have requested to keep seated as I have some injury to my neck, and I requested that from Mr. Mayor. Is that okay? Thank you. I would like to give a brief on the property services. I'm really proud to be working with a dedicated team committed to developing and delivering an ambitious housing strategy. A key priority in our housing strategy is to improve our existing homes for our tenants. We carry out an average 24,000 repairs and improvements to our home each year. We are working towards our net carbon zero target by retrofitted energy-saving measures to our existing housing stock and aim to have 90% of council homes with B energy rating by 2030. Fire risk assessment work completed at 2 supported housing schemes where all doors have been upgraded to current legislative standard and more to follow. A 2-year contract has been awarded to deliver community alarm upgrade, improved empty home turnaround times in all categories and all KPI reported in target. We have revised our process in the management of complaints to ensure they are closed within target to reduce the number of stage 2 complaints. 23-24 capital investment program have been finalized and has commenced with the improved monitoring. As a new initiative, myself together with housing team, we are making planned visit to each of our supported housing schemes to listen to our senior tenants, face-to-face visits, and a spot check the property in attempt to prevent complaints and dissatisfaction building up, in addition to our stock condition survey, and that's never been done before. With our investment and delivery options, our strategy, which will launch next year, includes plan to invest 369 million in council homes over the next 10 years, 263 million investment in existing homes, 106 million in new council homes, including 28 million for climate action. We have a number of new housing projects that we are currently working on, including the development of 5 former garage sites in the borough. We have just completed 4 new homes in Beachfield and in Kings Langley. Strategic asset review has been approved for next 2 years. 8 construction site projects delivering 165 new council homes, and they're progressing well on site. To further improve the lives of our tenants, our Housing Operations Service are currently engaging with voluntary sector partner to explore opportunities to enhance amenity and green areas in some of our wards. Proposals are currently in development, and we look forward to engage with our tenants to share ideas and propose improvement for these areas. Implemented a process for data collection to comply with the tenant satisfaction measure. With support from an external contractor, MEL Research, to conduct customer satisfaction survey on our behalf. Building Safety Act, residents' engagement strategies significantly progressed with a draft framework to be taken to tenant and leaseholder committee in July. Around the Building Safety Acts, once again, residents' engagement strategies have significantly progressed with the draft framework to be taken to tenant and leaseholder committee in July. Our housing team participated in District Council Network round-the-table discussion to support influencing a central government funding decision relating to humanitarian responses. As a result, we are now in receipt of quite a few grants. We have been providing vital coordination across multiple agency and ongoing support, advices, and assistance across 4 sites, Ukrainian guests and resettled household in support of the Council humanitarian response. We have acquired 4 private rented sector properties to enable prevention of homelessness for Afghani households. Our Safe Community Services is working with a range of partners locally across the county and regionally to tackle key priorities, including rising cost of living, affordability, homelessness prevention, migration, and community safety, ensuring that we identify the implementation coordinated plan to support residents by improving access to wraparound support. I think I'm going to leave it there as the time isn't enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Diani. We've got Councillor Pringle.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive report, Councillor. I understand that you have brought in a brand new initiative of visiting supported housing with the team. Can you explain to the Council how your new initiative is helping our most vulnerable residents?
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. So when I started this initiative, I was worried that will the staff, would the team be taking this as I'm trying to keep an eye on their work and criticize their work, but surprisingly, it all went really well. The team is now coordinating really well with the work, and they are equally responding with the residents when we're visiting. We've had some great comments from residents saying, "Oh, we've never seen such a thing before, and it's fantastic you're visiting." And there has been several issues which they don't report because they find it tiny, but since we were there, they were happy to talk, and most of them really appreciated that, you know, they don't have many visits from council, really. Thank you.
Thank you. As a follow-up, are there any particular visits that have stood out in your mind?
There is quite a few, but I'm happy to bring up one where we were visiting, and as we were walking past, it was a bungalow, and I noticed that the curtains and that the interior from outside looked very deteriorated, dark, and a lone dog I can hear, and I was very concerned. We stood out for a few minutes. I asked the officers if it's okay to knock the door, and we decided to knock on the door, and we had no response. So after a good 15 minutes of waiting, we managed to get the door open, and the resident didn't look in a good condition at all. The house was full of posts from the doorstep all the way I could see. We couldn't really get inside, but from there we've taken on that we would be taking care of this resident by a different approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those answers. It's really reassuring to know our
Thank you,
residents are being
Councillor
taken care of.
Pringle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Diani. Councillor McAravey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Diani, obviously we're in a current cost of living crisis at the moment, and we have a local organisation that provides services to vulnerable homeless community, namely DENS. And I was wondering, have you made any contact with that organisation? And if so, have you visited, and what your observations might be?
Councillor Diani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I have actually visited DENS, and I was quite surprised that what I assumed DENS to be providing, they were exceeding. They have brilliant standards. They have a really good approach towards their residents as they are looking to train them, to educate them, so they can really transit well to their new properties when they are when they're ready for that. That includes training them on how to cook their meals, training them how to take care of the garden, also a regular visit to teach them how to upkeep their own flats, so they can take care of their own property when they get one. There is in fact a scheme where they're awarding 5 points to get a better engagement from those who are not engaging or who's not willing at this stage. But overall, they are doing a fantastic job there. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor McAravey?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Douris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't seem to have a microphone. I would just, oh, yes, I do. Could I congratulate and thank Councillor Diani? Yes, can I congratulate you on bringing to the attention of the watching public and other members here, and of course the media, who I'm sure will also be interested, in letting everybody know of the successful completion of the residential accommodations that you referred to in your report, which of course were implemented and commenced under the previous Conservative administration.
And your question is?
Can I congratulate you?
Councillor Capozzi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, can I ask you if you could tell us a bit more about your rough sleeper accommodation programme, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Capozzi. So we have been operating, once again, it's not something we can turn around just from May. So it has been done by the council team, and I'm now a part of that. And it's a wonderful programme. It's called Rough Sleeper Accommodation Programme. We've managed to obtain 300,000 grant towards this new build, and we match the funding. This new builds provide single apartments for a temporary accommodation for 2 to 3 years basis, and we're hoping to continue trying to get these similar grants, because we do need a lot more for people when they start on the residency, as they need to learn their ropes before they can actually get property. So all these kind of properties give them early access and a better way to commence when they do get a property. Thank you.
And do you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just congratulate you on your initiative of visiting so many of our residents. And I concur with you that you've got an excellent team of officers in that department. As far as my question really, however, concerns a less rosy situation. You may well be aware that the maintenance of our council housing leaves a lot to be desired. Are there any policies to review the current contract of our contractor in this regard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Burney. So there is a review due within this year, but yes, it's yet to conclude as officers look for the options. It is a very big decision, so it would take its time. We already have extended this for 2 years with Osborne, so we still have 1 year in between to make our decisions. Thank you.
And Councillor Mitchell. Sorry, Councillor Burney, did you have a supplementary? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, this is going to be somewhat delayed, whether it's desirable or not. Could you tell us what sort of measures you put in place to monitor the efficiency of the current contractor and, for example, the length of time it takes to get reports of damages or repairs needed to be completed?
Councillor Diani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we are taking a lot more closer look to the day-to-day management. We are in a better position to keep in touch with Osborne's on a daily repairs. We have an officer situated in Osborne's office who could then become a bridge between any complaints directly with us or with them and communicate better. So we have definitely improved from where we were previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Hello, sorry if you already covered this in the initial bit, but there's quite a bit to take on board information. You've been doing so much. I was just wondering if you've had a chance to look into emergency temporary accommodation, because I'm hearing talk that people are getting trapped in that system in a bidding war and not able to get out because they haven't got the same ability. They lose some of their points, apparently, and they have to bid against people on the long waiting list already. So just wondering if that's something that you could look into, the emergency temporary accommodation.
Thank you for the question. In fact, I'm dealing with similar a situation from somebody of your ward. So you pretty much wanted to know about the allocation policy.
Briefly, please, Councillor Diani.
Sorry. So the temporary accommodation situation is to provide people the base, and then from there on, they have to move on to the property. They get points allocated based on a lot of grounds, which is medical, which is, it's a variety, and there's a document available on the website as well. But we are actively working with people to try to get them on the property ladder if they're ready. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Diani. Sorry, no time for a supplementary. Moving on to neighbourhood operations and Councillor Bromham.
On environmental matters first, at the Waste Aware Clothes Swap event, about 900 items of clothing found their way into new wardrobes. We had a successful compost and tree giveaway event with 5,000 trees taken. Our mowing teams are on their third cut of the season. Summer bedding plants are in and the 5-day deep clean of the A5 is done. When the splash park was out of action for a couple of days, the quick-thinking local management engaged entertainers, which proved very popular. There is a backlog of Category C tree maintenance, which is quite worrying, which we really want to get back on track. We're aiming for better enfranchisement of residents by publicising and explaining the good work which our staff do on all aspects of waste, grass, horticulture and arboreal. So to waste operations, we're launching new waste collection routes at the end of this month. Some householders will require day changes and those affected will have received a first communication already, to be followed by another letter and a bin tag. This will save approximately £1 million per year. We do, however, have some challenges with our bin lorries, for which we are considering solutions. I will be focusing on this very much with the team over the coming months. We have been using fuel which includes 50% hydro-treated vegetable oil, which is a type of biofuel, and that costs about 60p a litre more than standard diesel. There is a global shortage of vegetable oil following the Ukraine situation, exacerbating cost of living crisis and hunger. Also, the harvesting of solar energy in this way is very inefficient in terms of land area. Thus, the use of this fuel was not ethical or good use of the residents' council tax. So we are changing to standard diesel, which will make a considerable annual saving to the council. Currently, only 59% of the 55,000 households eligible for green waste bins have signed up to the subscription service. We will remain alert to the levels of resentment at having to pay, amounts being fly-tipped or adding to general waste, and what is happening to the 20,000 odd unused bins that are out there. Future policy on this, however, is likely to be out of our hands due to the imminent waste conformity legislation, which may mandate food and green bin collection. We want to reduce the amount of avoidable food waste especially, and to emphasise how important it is to put food waste in the caddy. And that food waste then goes through the Severn Trent anaerobic digester, which generates about 3 megawatts of electricity. We need to better optimise our two-tier waste system between the 10 districts and Hertfordshire, which was introduced decades ago before the era of recycling and is no longer optimal. And onto regulatory matters. In April, we prosecuted 4 people in unrelated fly tipping offences, and we also prosecuted 13 offenders who did not pay their fixed penalty notices, which were issued in November and December by our contractor District Enforcement Limited. And they had to pay an average of £453 each in total. The air quality management area in Northchurch was revoked in April, as air quality in the area has improved, with NOx being below the threshold for several consecutive years. The real-time air quality monitor function will therefore be moved from that area to Apsley, which is more in a valley, so the pollution is more concentrated there. Onto bereavement services. The soon-to-be-open Poppy Fields Cemetery and the adjacent crematorium is looking very smart, but lacking in actual poppies. For next year, we aim to have an evocative population of poppies popping up among the grasses and wildflowers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bromman. There's quite a queue of questions, so can I remind colleagues that it is a question, a brief preamble maybe is permissible, but can we keep it brief? Councillor Mitchell.
I was glad to hear you mention about tree management, because that's quite a significant issue in my ward, and it's causing the residents quite a great deal of distress because we've got some very old trees. I was wondering if the administration are looking at increasing the budget for tree management next year.
Councillor Bromman.
So similarly, it's something which I picked up on very much during canvassing, and on investigation I found that there was, even though we would say that some work was due to be done, it would in fact be in a list that wasn't even being actioned, so it's years behind schedule. So we will endeavour to work out what budgets are needed, and I have asked for a plan to get this back on track over a period of a few years, maybe 5 years.
Great, fantastic, thank you.
Do you have a follow-up question, Councillor Mitchell?
No, thank you.
No. Thank you. Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does the new administration intend to take forward the popular policy of verge hardening?
Councillor Bromman.
I beg your pardon, sorry, the popular policy of?
Verge hardening.
So there are, we have an enormous pressure on parking in residential areas, and I've even seen new developments like HMO's put in, where the calculations for available parking seem to have gone astray a bit. It leads to enormous stress. So the ultimate answer is to improve active travel and public transport. But in the short term, I agree that verge hardening is we're very fortunate to have the available land to be able to do that. And so there may well be more verge hardening that goes on, until our infrastructure is enabled partly by central governments.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question?
I do indeed, Mr. Mayor. The verge hardening policy had been on hold whilst the new officer responsible was securing funding to take it forward. But do we have a timescale for verge hardening recommencing?
Councillor Bromham.
We don't have a timescale at the moment, but we will endeavour to find that out, and we can provide a written answer.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, you did have your name up and it's been bounced off as you. Thank you. Councillor Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the portfolio holder, I understand that in previous years we invested quite a substantial amount of money in new lorries for our bin fleet. And I understand that those lorries have a number of performance issues made worse by the fact that the technical knowledge to maintain them is abroad, and due to Brexit regulations we've been unable to bring expertise in, and that's been adding a lot of extra costs to our budget each year. Can you highlight moves that we're making that may save that extra cost and recoup some of our previous year losses?
Councillor Bromham.
Thank you for that question. Yes, the issues with the bin lorries, I mean, people may have noticed what I'm calling a 30-yard splat, because the loader on the back of the lorry is not properly fastened onto the hopper, and this is partly due to poor specification of the lorries when they were purchased about 2 years ago, and also difficulty in getting management people. But this has been exacerbated also by long lead times on spare parts due to Brexit, partly, and all the additional red tape involved. For example, one bin lorry was out of action for months because of waiting for a new part. And so we had to hire trucks in the meantime, which has been quite expensive. And the other aspect is the freedom of movement. So we found that the support that we get from the Dutch company is a lot less than it used to be, because they're less likely to embed field service employees in the UK, which they used to do.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
No supplementary. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Councillor Friedman. Councillor Deacon. No, withdrawn. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you very much. Following on from Councillor Mitchell's question earlier about tree management, Councillor Bromham may well be aware of a life-threatening event that occurred in Northchurch just a few weeks ago. A tree that's on the land belonging to Hertfordshire County Council and is the responsibility of Hertfordshire County Council has been monitored by Decorum, and there was a previous fall last year, and it appears that this was allowed to occur again. And I now am informed that there is a...
Can we come to a question, please?
Can you give more details on the backlog? Because residents have got in touch and they're bringing up all sorts of other trees which simply haven't been maintained and pose a danger to life. I can't emphasise how important this was, as young children were pulled back by their grandfather when they heard the tree going down and they were in a state of shock. And so this really is something which we need a programme.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle.
Thank you.
Councillor Bromham.
So yes, tree work is categorised, and the officers are quite diligent about going around and examining the trees and categorising them and putting them in a database and so on. Obviously, that is not a completely precise science, but when a tree is identified as having a safety risk, then it is usually actioned very quickly. I can come back to you on the exact number of days that is. Yes, this whole topic is something that is under investigation at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Bromham. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Pringle?
Yes, my supplementary is I understand when I investigated this that there had been a considerable backlog that had built up under the previous administration. Can you confirm that this is the case?
Councillor Bromham.
Yes, especially for the non-safety related incidents, a big backlog did build up. And in fact, we had our suppliers we've had difficulty with, again, because of labour shortages to do that work. I have actually approved 2 new arboreal companies to try and clear that backlog, but we will continue to look at the detail of the plan. But like you say, safety is very important. And I think, which I could possibly add to that particular issue, is that I understand it was quite difficult for the issue to be reported so that Decorum could respond quickly. So that's another aspect which my colleague will probably come on to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bromham. So, Councillor Taylor.
I'd like to...
Councillor Pringle, you need to switch off.
I note with concern your reply to Councillor Freedman about the problems that have been had with the bin lorries since they've been bought. Would you describe this as a benefit of Brexit?
Well, that's not really a benefit. I haven't identified any benefits yet. I have looked very hard, but no, that's, it does seem to be that they are just not, you know, when it comes to supplying parts and services, then it's easy for them to deal with all the other EU countries, but the UK comes to the bottom of the list, and unfortunately, sometimes it's, you know, they don't even need to deal with the UK at all for them to have a sound business.
Thank you, Councillor Bromham. Can we keep it to borough-related matters, please? So, moving forward, if there's no further questions. Latecomer, Councillor Barry Mears. Have to be quick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Just to say the extra things put on at the Splash Park while it wasn't working, they were brilliant. Are there plans to continue with these even without problems at the Splash Park?
It was a very quick initiative, partly because I did raise the issue when it was reported that the Splash Park was
It was a yes-no question, Councillor Bromham. Can we get to the answer?
Yes, it was quite expensive, so we'll have to look very carefully at whether we can afford to do that sort of thing in the future.
So I guess that's a maybe.
Yes, it's a maybe.
Right, thank you. So moving on to climate change, Councillor England.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We all have to attach the proper cost to the CO2 which we demand or use. This is a new portfolio created to address the circumstances to see the world now about to witness a 1.5 degrees centigrade rise in average global temperature. Taking 0 as a reference point, we've added about 10% to that long-term human sweet spot. Here in Decorum, we are not the whole world, and we cannot solve this challenge on our own, but we will just be trying to do our bit alongside many other communities to keep our people, places and property out of harm's way. I recognise work done by officers and cabinet since 2019 to think this through and to establish baselines, etc. But this is a slow motion car crash in which we have used up our thinking time. Since Decorum unanimously declared climate emergency in July 2019, which at the time we had 9 or 10 budget years to arrival at 2030, as much as 40% of that time is now gone. Previously, the Conservative administration chose to lump this emergency in with the other duties of the leader, with the result that the Fabric First claims of the former deputy leader and housing portfolio holder have been underdone, with a 90% level of ambition rather than something properly ambitious. Since taking on my portfolio, I've attended the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership briefing and meetings, and have taken on the position of chair of the partnership, which puts Decorum at the centre of their important work in Hertfordshire and indeed regionally across the east of England. Avoiding the worst impact is one thing, but there is another side to this portfolio and to this subject. By striving to reinvent our borough for self-preservation, we can choose climate generation instead of emergency. We can generate, perhaps literally, a better future than just crossing our fingers. We all have to attach the proper cost to the CO2 that we demand or use. The initial programme has to work within the budget established in February, but still includes a big step on active travel, cycling, and this is the key to easing parking. A big move on recycling, especially removing food waste from grey bins and making green waste easily compostable so it doesn't go into the green bins. We will be striving to increase our figures, building on the work building on current Hertfordshire-wide awareness campaign. This will include working closely with schools. Focus on funding streams available to draw in investment for decarbonising work. A lot of good stuff at the LGA conference on that, which I'm really surprised that we haven't already been doing some of that. Solar Together is the phase 2, which is being done through the HCCSP, giving people confidence to invest in solar panels, which have an amazing payback. So they are one of the best things that you can invest in right now, particularly with all the volatility and any other investment. 104 charge points will be installed across council-owned car parks this year, about time too. We will then assess the future need for the borough and move to address this. When I looked, it looked as if there were 568 of these needed by 2030. So we've just done 104 and we're 4 years in. Amazing. Climate generation is bringing a new energy to Decorum. New renewable power generation, but also a different kind of energy, a can-do attitude, and the recognition that if we don't want a climate emergency, we all know the meaning of emergency, we have to generate something else instead. We all have to attach, you say after me if you've got it, we all have to attach the proper cost to the CO2 we demand or use. Absolutely welcome your ideas. 51 heads are better than one. Welcome questions.
Thank you, Councillor England. Do we have any questions for Councillor England? No, thank you. So, Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Councillor England. I was pleased to hear you mention that you're working with schools. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Councillor England.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. I must give credit to the officers and to the previous administration for Decorum Climate Action Network. I really do think that this is a good idea, a good concept, a good brand. Looking across Hertfordshire, it's an approach which hasn't necessarily been taken by other authorities, and I absolutely intend to exploit it. At the moment, I was told there were 80 organisations signed up to the Decorum Climate Action Network, and there are 580, I think, people, individuals. When I looked more closely, I discovered that the 80 included some double counting, so it was actually only 73. and of that, there were 14 schools. I'm sure that we have more than 14 schools in our borough, and there are communications going out now which are including an invitation to get involved with climate action, with Decorum Climate Action Network. So I very much hope that as we go forward, we will have more involvement with schools.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up question? Thank you. Councillor Pesh.
Oh.
You need to switch yourself on.
Again. We'll get the hang soon. I note that you talk about the installation of solar panels in able to help people. Could I please ask whether you're actually considering installing the solar panels in our existing council houses?
Councillor England.
I'm certainly very keen to do a lot more of that. I'm afraid it comes under another one of those things that, given we've been for 4 years in, I find it difficult to realise that we haven't made more progress. Went to the LGA conference last week, and there are many examples of councils which declared a climate emergency at the same time as us, and it's just staggering how many things there were that we had to talk about. We are one in the top 20 for the amount of social housing that we have, and that is a huge, massive opportunity for us to use that real estate to harness the sun's energy. Robin was talking about biodiesel. Biodiesel is basically another way of storing the sun's energy, and then it gets turned back into energy to drive trucks. But it's actually much more efficient in the round and leaves more room for food production, which we absolutely need with the world's population at 8.1 billion. So the more PVs that we can get, which are not necessarily in fields, although as far as I'm concerned, fields are fine as well if somebody wants to do it, then the better. So yes.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Just very quickly, I mean, will you be considering putting anything in the budget in the future for it?
Councillor England.
I have lots of ideas. We're at the early stages of the budget planning at the moment, so I certainly am going to feed those ideas in. One of the things that I discovered when I had a briefing with my team is that the team of officers that I can work with directly is actually very small. There are some other great officers right across the piece, but obviously I'm sharing those officers with the rest of our administration. It's incredible how much stuff there is to absorb when you start, and to a certain extent, the poor officers are wondering whether they should talk to me or talk to someone else. And of course, the answer is they should talk to someone else and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor England. Do we have any further questions for Councillor England? Councillor Bromham.
We're both members of the Decorum Environmental Forum, and this organisation seems to have been very much neglected over the past years, and there's been a small dedicated team who've kept it alive. They have a very good programme of meetings and guest speakers on biodiversity and climate. Will we try to do more in future to make sure that this organisation can actually survive? It doesn't have any budget, but maybe we can help with a meeting place and raising their profile.
I think there was a question in there.
Sort of. The answer is, I will let you know. Similar to the answer that you gave, we've got a lot of budget ideas and things to talk about. Unfortunately, with the cuts in local government that we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years of Tory government, and the effects of Brexit and the effects of pandemic, and we're all looking at these waves coming along, but there's a much bigger one coming behind them, and I've just been talking about it. With all of that coming along, there are huge pressures across all our budget. We need to have a big conversation with our residents. We need to bring our residents with us. We need to explain what we're doing, whether it's parking charges, whether it's, council tax, whether it's the local plan. We need to do consultation in a way that's never been done here before, and I'm bloody sure we're going to do it.
Thank you, Councillor
On the
England.
point of order, Mr Mayor, is it appropriate to swear in the chamber?
Apologies, Mr Mayor, my passion got the better of me.
Thank you, Councillor England. Thank you, Councillor Guest. Moving on to the place portfolio holder, Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I'd like to say how immensely proud and humbled I am to be the portfolio holder for Place for Dacorum Borough Council. It's a wonderful borough, and I've worked with many of you across the aisle, and I know you to be people who are very passionate about this borough, and I hope that all of us can actually produce a gold standard in service for councils. I've been a little ambitious in my overview because in truth this portfolio does cover a lot of areas, everything from the draft local plan, the business community, health, sports, arts and culture, to adventure playgrounds and Christmas lights. So I might not get through my list tonight, but I'll do my very best. To the officers who've been working on all of these items, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work. Moving to planning services, the public inquiry to the 1,400 new homes at Marshcroft has now come to an end. The decision is now awaited by the Secretary of State. I don't need to tell most of you here that there are no timescales presently, unfortunately, and it will have a significant impact on the draft local plan, but I will keep you in touch as much as I possibly can. The Space Scrutiny Committee received a comprehensive report on the Planning Enforcement Service from the Head of Development Management on 5th of July. I know it's something that many of you have already contacted me on, and I just want to thank you. I'm very grateful for your input. This update allowed us to look at the fact that the proposals to bring down the live caseload for the service from 400 to 300 per annum. Now, that might not sound a lot, but actually it's an incredibly ambitious figure. And the fact that they're at 400 at the moment, with the resources they have, is a real acknowledgement of the passion and commitment of the officers. In order to assist them to do that, there's a report on 18th of July going to Cabinet seeking for a temporary officer service, which will be a 16-month period in order to bring that number down. Dacorum's enforcement service at the moment was the highest performing in Hertfordshire in terms of number of formal notices served. So again, given the pressures that they have in their numbers, I think that's really extraordinary. Moving on now to proposals being worked up across the council, led by the Assistant Director for Planning, on dealing with the remaining aspects of the Chilterns Beechwoods mitigation strategy. I know this has given us many a headache, but this is insignificant and very important work. It will allow us to ensure that we can identify and provide sufficient sound, suitable alternative natural green space, which will then support the borough in delivering the number of houses required. I don't doubt that many of our members across all aisles will be keen to give an update, will be keen for me to give an update on the draft local plan. I'm sorry I'm not in a position to do that yet. I'm very keen to. Work progresses on the new draft and a new timetable is being prepared by officers to take the council to the next stage, a regulation draft. We will be in a position, I hope, to consult members very soon. Moving to the Strategic Director for Place, he attended the UK Retail Investment and Infrastructure Forum, UK REIF, in Leeds, 16th and 18th of May, right after our elections. It was incredibly successful. It was a soft launch for our Hemel Town Centre vision. Again, I don't need to talk to any of the members about the need to be able to invest and imbue some life into Hemel and the Old Town and New Town. This particular launch was really effective. We had over 50 contacts that we'd never made before in terms of investment and interest. So we'll continue those inquiries, and again, I'll be feeding that back into members, probably through the SPAY and the usual processes. Work continues on the Old Town Place project and recent achievements. I recently attended the Old Town Hall, and it was wonderful to see the summer planting and new wooden planters built by the Community Action Decorum's repair shed, planted by Sunnyside Rural Trust, who I have a very soft spot for because our youngest goes there, and bright artwork from a local artist, Annie's Funky Art. Maylands master plan work has been tendered and submissions from consultants are being evaluated. Again, that's a huge piece of work, and it's looking at the next 20 years. I think I'm finished, sorry, I haven't got all of it done, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkie. We've got a question from Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wilkie. I'd just like to congratulate everyone who has played a part in the Dacorum Borough Council securing the funding. I believe it's over 1.7 million from the UK Prosperity Fund. Can you tell us a little bit more about how it will be allocated to help the residents of the borough?
Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. I must give credit to the previous administration on this. They worked incredibly hard, as did the officers. And yes, we were able to secure £1.763 million. There is some discussion about what this funding is for. Is it supposed to, for example, help us recover from lost EU funds? But in any event, it's given us an opportunity to reach out to the community and ask them what their priorities are. There's been expressions of interest which were submitted by council officers. I know a number of officers, for example, who put expressions of interest for the Canal Trust and other such items. They were also sent by the voluntary sector groups, stakeholders such as the local enterprise partnership. This has resulted in a robust investment plan that was approved by the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, albeit not until the start of this year. So a lot of the work was done previously, but it wasn't finalised until this year. Since approval of the investment plan, officers have been undertaking further due diligence to ascertain whether grants are still required and what projects can be delivered within the funding potentially being offered. Community Action Decorum is one in particular that's close to my heart, and I know many of the other councillors, and they are able to actually reach out to smaller grants. So, for example, where they're looking at assisting groups for domestic abuse, human trafficking and other groups negatively impacted in the community. So they are going to be given a very specific sum, which will then go out into these smaller groups in the area. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Councillor Pringle.
Extremely comprehensively. Thank you, Councillor Wilkie.
Do you have a supplementary?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Wilkie. In the last 9 months, there have been 2 highly controversial planning appeals in my ward that have been fast-tracked. The fast-tracking process has been used for some years, but this is the first time it has been used for cases where the officer's recommendation has been overturned by Development Management Committee, and the decision to fast-track an appeal is then made against the Development Management Committee's decision by Dacorum, not the Planning Inspectorate. The fundamental problem with this process is that the appellant gets another opportunity to include disputed information, but neighbours and ward councillors who have objected to the application are denied a role. They are denied a fair hearing. The previous portfolio holder banned fast-tracking controversial appeals resulting from the first case, but this ban would appear to have been discontinued.
Can we come to a question, please, Councillor Johnson?
Does the portfolio holder agree with me that fast-tracking these cases is fundamentally unfair And will the portfolio holder reinstate the ban to stop this from happening? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for your questions. Very comprehensive. I think I understand you to say that these fast-tracked recommendations have been happening in the last 9 months, so I'm not particularly familiar with what you're talking about, but I'm happy to look into it. To your specific questions, do I think these are fair? I'd need to look at it in a little bit more detail, and perhaps you'd be good enough to send me the particulars that you're referring to in your question there, and I could look at that with officers. To your second question, that it was banned, it happened and then it was banned, and now that ban has stopped. I don't know if that's the case, but certainly I'll look into that and give you a written response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkie. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Johnson? Thank you very much. Councillor Burney.
A point of order, Mr. Mayor. Could you please ensure that the portfolio holder and others, when they say they'll give a written answer, circulates it to all councillors? This sounds particularly important in this respect.
I believe that is the common practice and has been for the last year or so. Member support will distribute written responses to all councillors. Last but not least, People and Transformation, Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councillors and guests. I am delighted to have been appointed to Cabinet as portfolio holder for People and Transformation. While the services it covers are not traditionally frontline services, they are critical, important in making us a highly efficient and effective council. Within my portfolio are 4 key functions: people and HR, digital and IT, communications and transformation. Much of their work is delivering council-wide improvements, such as a new digital platform or working directly with services on specific challenges, such as recruitment issues. Since the last full council, the teams have been very busy making significant progress. The people team have been heavily focused on delivering people strategy, in particular recruitment. The economic picture has made recruitment particularly challenging in the public sector, and it is rightly a focus of the team. The recent introduction of the market forces policy and agency work frame will help to alleviate the challenge and cost. In particular, those professional areas where recruitment is particularly acute. More positively, we have recently run a considerable number of successful recruitment campaigns, so we will see a large number of new starters joining the council imminently. The new leadership team for neighbourhood operations is a very good example of this. The digital team has an important role in making sure our technology continues to function in a safe and efficient manner. This is highly complex, but they continue to deliver it well. More broadly, they are leading the way on introducing a new digital platform for the council. This will be a major building block in our ambitions for how we operate as a council. However, we have a programme of significant developments in advance of that. The team recently introduced Gov Wi-Fi across all Dacorum buildings. This means that once signed in to your device, we'll connect to the Wi-Fi automatically across thousands of buildings. They are also rolling out a kit refresh to staff, which will help us move towards our ambition of more agile working and upgrading our team's functionality, so we can accept and make external calls via our laptop. This will help us to be more accessible to the residents that we serve. This all links in with the work of our transformation team, who are driving forward our customer strategy work. The aim of this is to ensure that the residents is at the heart of everything we do. It will link to our digital platform ambitions and will involve every corner of the council. The team are already progressing in some areas, such as our telephony, to make it a quicker and more straightforward experience for those who call us. We are also ensuring our webpage is up to date and organised in the most helpful way. This is better for our residents, but will also help reduce the volume of calls we get, allowing us to focus on those residents who really need our help. The team are also working with services, so we provide the most useful information up front when we contact our residents. What should they expect? When should they expect it? What to do if they have questions? Summer is a busy time for our communications team as our busy events programme gets into full swing. We delivered 2 highly successful flag-raising ceremonies events for Armed Forces Day, 19th of June, and Windrush Day, 22nd of June, at our new flagpole in the walled garden, Guybridge Park. The latter was part of a very successful programme running for a number of events. We then delivered our annual Armed Forces Day event on the 24th of June in Guybridge Park. All these events were very well attended. The comms team also delivered our annual staff award ceremony, which was held recently at Shendish Manor. The team managed to secure sponsorship for this event, and it was a great success, which individuals and teams from across the council recognised for their excellent work. We rely on our staff to deliver for our residents, and I believe it is crucial to ensure we help build and maintain their morale by recognising their excellence. I wish it to be noted, I would like to thank my team for all their help and assistance since becoming their portfolio holder. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Weston. We have a question from Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are you is the portfolio holder working with Hertfordshire County Council to promote the professional roles that are difficult to recruit to as career choices in schools?
Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. Yes, I'm working with all my portfolio holders and all my councillors and any councillors to promote any positions for the council, especially where you say with the schools as well.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do indeed, Mr. Mayor. What work are you doing with the County Council to promote these professions as careers for young people to choose?
Councillor Weston.
Can I come back to you with a written reply on that? Because I want to get together with my county councillors just to check to make sure that we are obviously recruiting correctly.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Guest? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think the question was answered. It was not about how we are recruiting now, but how we are working with the County Council and work with the schools to encourage young people to choose these professions as their careers.
Councillor Weston, if you want to add to that.
Sorry, Councillor Guest. All I can say is I will work with the Herts County Council councillors to obtain exactly the information that you require, and I will reply with a written request.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Weston. Any further questions? Councillor Mitchell.
I was originally going to ask a question similar to Councillor Guest about training the young, really, to fulfil these roles. But I also wanted to ask, as that's already been asked, what is the HR team doing specifically to access new recruitment channels and new potential pools of employees? Because I'm aware there's quite an issue on the ground, and that is directly impacting our service delivery to our residents.
Councillor Mitchell. Sorry, Councillor Weston.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Vacancies can exist for a variety of reasons and do not necessarily mean a systematic problem. Our turnover is healthy and we have experienced a lot of recruitment success in recent months, with many recruits joining the council in the weeks and the months to come. There are still some hard to recruit professionals These are not unique to the DBC, but developments like our market forces policy will mean we can compete favourably with the market. But again, any other information you require, I'm quite happy to send you a written reply. Thank you, Councillor.
Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Mitchell?
Just really more around what we're going to do for the specific areas that are definitely struggling, which, for example, is landscaping. So I know that they've kind of hit a bit of a dead end and they're really struggling. So it would be good to know if we've got some plans or what the plans are that we've got in place to attract potential employees for those roles, because they're very visible to the residents.
Any response, Councillor Weston?
Again, we are doing all we can for recruiting the right people in the right places. Any recruitment should come from the SL team leaders to request, and where we will be recruiting the correct people in the correct places.
Thank you. We have Councillor Pringle's gone down the list. We need Councillor Mitchell to switch off. Thank you. So I think Councillor Pringle was first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Weston, I'm really pleased to hear about the prioritisation you've given to recruiting new members of staff. It would appear that the council got into quite a dire situation with recruitment in the recent period, of which we really weren't aware until it became clear that there was, well, what could be described as a recruitment crisis that hadn't been addressed. And I, first of all, I'm asking you, are you willing to work imaginatively with colleagues and local colleges? For example, West Herts College is almost touching distance from here. There are government grants available for apprenticeships, which would be revenue coming from outside of this budget and which could be used to actually invest in creating apprenticeships with West Herts College, which could be directed at working at people at demand here. And
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Can we
okay, well, that's
get the answer?
The question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. We have been on a significant recruitment drive recently to ensure that we have as many permanent staff as possible, and we are looking everywhere, whether it be schools, whether it be apprenticeships, sponsorship, over the whole wider area to recruit as many people as we need. But again, it has to come from the SLT team to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any supplementary?
No supplementary, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tyndall, you were up. No, past Councillor Bromham.
I'm aware that the staff working in some very arduous roles, especially the bin loaders and similar very physical roles like that, where it's 37 hours a week. And I'm aware that the sickness rates in some of those roles are quite high, and also that the staff working in this building, for example, have enjoyed increased flexibility in their working patterns, whereas the same...
Can we come to a question,
yeah,
please?
So my question is, will we be trying to work out ways of more flexibility for these people who are in these particularly challenging roles?
Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Councillor. Vacancies can exist for a variety of reasons and do not necessarily mean a systematic problem. Our turnover is healthy, and we have experienced a lot of recruitment success in recent months with many new recruits. The council, many recruits join the council in the weeks and months to come. It is still hard to recruit professionals, but these are unique to DBC, but developments like our market forces policy will mean we can compete favourably within the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weston. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Bromwell?
Yeah, well, I was just after a yes/no answer, really, and that will we prioritise people in very arduous physical roles in this council for trying to work out ways to improve their working conditions?
Thank you. Councillor Weston.
Yes, that is one of the areas that we're looking to make sure we get the right people in the right positions, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Weston. If we have no further questions, we will move on to the motion. Agenda item 5. Over to you, Councillor Pringle. Can you please read out your motion?
I'll turn my microphone on first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this motion arises as a result following the elections across the country in which we all participated on May the 4th. And if you just bear with me, because my screen has gone just at the crucial point. So the motion is, thank you, given the findings of the Electoral Commission and the experiences of many legitimate voters in Dacorum who either were turned away at polling stations or who wished to vote but did not attend the polling station because they did not have photo ID, it is proposed that the Leader of the Council write to the Home Secretary to ask that voting ID requirements be suspended immediately for all elections and by-elections until there can be a full inquiry into the proportionality and efficacy of this requirement. Councillor, I believe, Mr. Mayor, I believe I've got a seconder. I will speak in proposal of my motion first and then ask for my seconder if that's the correct protocol.
All in good time. I believe the protocol is I need to find out whether there is a seconder. Who seconds this motion?
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Barry Mears. So, Councillor Pringle, you have
Yes.
time to talk to your motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion that I hope we can all agree on. We are all here elected representatives, and we go out and knock on the doors. We get the voters to come out and we welcome them at the polling stations. And we recognise that our voice is not the voice of an individual, but of everyone in our wards who comes to vote, whether or not they vote for us. We speak for them all. And the interim findings of the Electoral Commission following the introduction of voter ID in May was quite concerning in terms of the way it discriminated against particular voter groups, who I would describe as vulnerable voter groups. And that means that they are less generally empowered within society, and that sometimes their only way of having any power whatsoever over their life circumstances is at the ballot box. So it is very concerning for not just boroughs and ourselves, but for the whole democracy that we live in, that it must be inclusive, it must encourage participation, and it must reflect the values of democracy in that every single person's vote matters. It doesn't, you know, if they choose not to vote, that is a democratic decision, but the preclusion from voting must not be forced on them by unjustified regulations. As an someone who works on evidence and supports evidence-based decision-making, it would appear that the basis for introducing the voter ID scheme was not made out in evidence. There was no clear evidence criminologically of any significant personation offences. And therefore, one pauses to question the motivation of bringing it in, but there are some very clear outcomes whether or not they were foreseen, have come out from the interim studies. And so whether or not these were intended consequences, we now know that they are consequences. They are extremely undesirable consequences, and therefore the voter ID registration scheme should be reviewed. And the first statistic I will give you is that the general awareness of voter ID was reasonably good. The Electoral Commission finds that was 87%. However, there are two groups where the awareness was significantly lower, and I would submit those are vulnerable groups whose interests are not always top of the agenda. So there was 5% less awareness in people of black and minority ethnic persuasion, and also of young people. And I know that we all want to encourage our young people to vote, to believe in democracy, to get involved in democracy, and realise that is the way to affect society around you. That is the legitimate way. And to not reach out to those young people and ask them to vote and encourage them to vote is simply wrong. But it's not just about everyone's right to vote. We also see that those who are already in underrepresented groups, people who already don't vote by demographic, were excluded even more. It is very concerning, the preliminary results. The most concerning is people who do not have a recognised form of ID. They voted 13%, were 13% less likely to vote. And we know that the sort of ID that people here might assume, they have a passport in their drawer, they have a driving licence in their wallet. We don't think twice about those things. But actually, as our unconscious bias training teaches us, there are other people who can't afford a car, who never go on foreign holidays, and who do not have these things. And they are maybe people who, no one should be excluded from democracy because they're disorganised, because their lives are too busy, because they're holding down several jobs due to the cost of living crisis and trying to support children. These are the to engage. And all of those statistics and findings, I would submit, are a good enough reason for everyone here to be united in supporting this motion. But it's not just about statistics, it's about real people. And let me tell you about two real people that I met in the run-up to the 3rd of May, who were not able to vote. And one of them was a lady who, I would say, fell clearly into the disenfranchised group. She was in social housing, but she also was a carer and couldn't get out very much. And she was genuinely distressed when I spoke to her that she wasn't able to vote. She knew about voter ID. She said, I just didn't apply on time. I didn't realise there was a deadline. I'd love to go and vote, but I don't have any ID. And there I stood looking in the face of an aberration on our democracy. And I felt ashamed that somehow I lived in a society that prevented that woman from going and exercising her right to vote. And another gentleman who lives in sheltered accommodation, I got to know him quite well. He was retired and he was teasing me because he said, what's the point in voting for you lot anyway? Nothing ever changes. What do you do anyway? And I challenged him a little bit in a friendly way. And I said, go on, come and vote. I'll be at the polling station. And so he said, right, well, I'll have to find my driving licence. So the next day he came to the polling station, walked up, and he was turned away because he'd happened to leave his driving licence at his son's house, quite some distance away. So he'd brought his national service registration, I think from the 1950s or 60s, when he did national service for this country and fought for the democracy in which we live. But guess what? It didn't have a photo on it. He was turned away and he didn't get to vote. I don't think there's anyone in this chamber who can feel proud of that. So we must write to the Secretary of State and demand that this impediment to people exercising their democratic right in this country is removed. It's not about how close an election was, although there were some very close calls, and these things may make a difference, certainly at a national election when there's many, many marginal decisions. We know that these margins can really make a difference to outcomes, and they will disenfranchise young people, black, minority, ethnic people, and vulnerable people who are carers, who do not make the assumptions that maybe people in here do about their access to information technology, digital cameras, passports and voter ID. I think the preliminary investigation shows this must be suspended now, and I hope we can all come together cross-party and support this motion in favour of the integrity of our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. We have, I think, because portfolio holders get priority on the system, they've jumped up the list, and I need to just clarify who was first. I think Councillor Williams was up first.
Thank you, Chair. I've had a very long introduction. It's brief. We won't be supporting the motion. Yes, it was the first time of voter identification. It's a system that is used almost universally across the world, that people need to show identification to vote, certainly across most European countries, which are so beloved of the party opposite. I think when we look back in 10 years, people will get used to this. It's always a change when it comes in as a new. Are we saying that, every other country or most every other country in the world can cope with it, but our residents can't? I don't think that's likely. And in 10 years' time, I'm certain we'll look back and we'll say to ourselves, did we really allow people to go and vote without identification? I'm sure almost everybody in the room knows somebody who's voted at some point, not for themselves. Unless the presiding officer happens to know you personally, they've got no way of knowing who you are when you turn up. And therefore, I think voter identification is a positive step forward. I think in a few years' time, we'll look back and say, why did we ever let people go and vote without showing who they were? It is a right for the individual, and I'm sure that, as I say, every other country can cope with it, and I've no doubt that the residents of the UK are equally as able to cope with a form of showing ID which is readily available, and therefore we're not supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm standing to support what Councillor Williams has said. I think the timing is completely wrong on this. The Electoral Commission's report isn't due until September. Their interim report that was released in June shows that 92% of people were well aware of voter ID. 0.7% of people initially turned away because they didn't present ID. And of those, 63% of them came back to vote. I think it's a very small issue that Councillor Pringle is raising. And I think voter ID fraud, voter fraud is a rising issue. 5 years ago, it was just over 300 across the country. Last election, it was nearly 2,000. I think it's something with globalisation is going to become a bigger problem, and we're very vulnerable. It's a democratic right to vote, I totally accept, but I do feel that ID is imperative. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. Councillor Weston, I wasn't meaning to deter you. It's your place in the queue now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say I totally agree with Councillor Pringle. I'm sure, like many of us who was at the polling station, that we had residents come and they weren't allowed to vote. There was one resident I remember who came with ID. They turned him away because his ID didn't look like him. So, as councillors, we are accountable to our residents. Our residents trust us, so we have to trust our residents to be able to come and vote without any ID. I will be supporting Councillor Pringle's motion. Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Weston. Councillor Whitelow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the sentiment behind the motion, Councillor Pringle. It is indeed of concern if there is a need for ID, if the need for ID prevented some from voting. the figures quoted by Councillor Guest actually were reflected very much where I was standing. Sorry, did you hear any of that? No. All right, can I start again? Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, right, so I was just saying that I appreciate...
There we go. I think you've got it now. We've got a list up here. Our eagle-eyed legal eagle is very good at this. So what we can do is if everybody takes themselves off and then... Councillor Pesh. There we go. If you switch on now, Councillor Whitelow, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for your forbearance, and I'll forgive Councillor Pesh. Right, so as I was trying to say, I appreciate the sentiment behind the motion from Councillor Pringle, and it is of concern if the need for ID did prevent some from voting. But as Councillor Banks has already shown, it is a relatively few number. However, it's still of concern. However, I understand.
You've come on again.
So, Councillor Pesh, I think if we can keep everybody off until Councillor Whitelow's finished, and then we've got, as I say, we've got the list up here.
I know some people don't want to hear me, but this is getting a bit ridiculous. But I don't take it personally. And let's see, I got about 2 sentences out. I won't mention Councillor Pringle again, you know, but really, we do know that there are areas in this country where it is essential to have voter ID to protect the rights of all to vote unimpeded and in freedom, freedoms that we enjoy and almost sometimes take for granted. Therefore, it will come as no surprise if I tell you that I won't be able to support the motion. I'm reasonably comfortable in the knowledge that voters will embrace these new measures and that the teething measures and the teething problems will be sorted out. But really, I think the pressure should be on us to urge that those problems are sorted out by recognising that some people within our communities do need that protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitelow. So next up, Councillor Banks. Councillor Guest. You're next, Councillor Pesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the recent borough election campaign, on the doorstep, my team and I told people that they needed ID to vote. Most people were glad that their votes were being protected from impersonation, from someone impersonating them and stealing their vote. Although one man did say to me it was sad that it was necessary. Most people said that they had passports, driving licences or senior bus passes, and one man said he had an MOD card, a valid form of voter ID. For those who didn't, we told them how to apply for a free voter ID through Dacorum Borough Council. In fact, one of my fellow ward councillors, Councillor Graham Elliott, actually went through the process with someone on the doorstep and got them signed up for a voter ID card on the doorstep. In so many walks of life these days, we need ID to protect our identities from those who would steal them for malicious purposes. Why should people not be protected at the ballot box? Centuries ago, the change from voting by show of hands to voting by secret ballot was a big change. It protected democracy then. Voter ID protects democracy now from voter fraudsters perverting democracy by stealing their votes. I can't support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. So we've got Councillor Pesh. We've got Councillor Binder and Bristow on the list, if you can switch off to allow Councillor Pesh the floor, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Labour Group will certainly be supporting this motion. I can't understand why anybody would not want to support it, actually. We don't have this. I can't believe that people seem to think there are so many people that are voting in place of somebody else. There are actually figures, which I haven't got at the moment, but it was a very small proportion overall where people might well have done this. And to put so many people off from being able to vote for the sake of a few people is just not acceptable. We may well have told people you have to take identity with you, but as Councillor Pringle said, there are a lot of people that don't have those sort of identifications. They don't go away, as you've said, they don't drive, they may not have a bus pass even. It's very, very difficult, and especially for younger people as well, who haven't probably had to do anything like this before. So we will certainly be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pesh. Councillor Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wanting to speak out because Councillor Banks and members opposite have made a couple of claims that I completely disagree with. The first, you've pulled out some figures that talk about the fact that you think that in Dacorum, the number of people that turned away and then didn't return back is very small, and that you're okay with that number because it's very small. I'm not okay with there being anybody at all. But more than that, I want to point out that you've been able to pull out data that tells you what the problem is of people that are not that have not been able to vote. Nobody has ever been able to pull out any data, especially in Dacorum when it's been asked for, of actual voter fraud. We're trying to focus on a problem that nobody can prove the problem exists. Theoretically, you're saying it might exist, but then you're trying to use data saying the data on the mitigation strategy for that. You're accepting that the data on that is small, but you're not accepting the data of the problem. More than that, Councillor Guest spoke about people on the doorstep and what was coming through that. And yes, all of us played a part in encouraging people to sign up for voter ID if they needed it by asking them what to do. However, I would like to say that I got elected by a large of my electorate. I didn't. We had a reasonably large turnout in our side. It was 37%. That's pretty much appalling. I'm sorry, we know that local elections don't engage too many people. We want that to be more. And the problem is, if you give somebody an extra hurdle to go over it, they go, you know what, it's raining, I can't be bothered. Our problem at the moment should be encouraging people to vote. Once we get to a problem where most people are voting and therefore we don't have with them being discouraged, we can possibly look at trying to have fewer people vote. But right at the moment, when it's hard enough to get somebody to come to the ballot box in the first place, why are we throwing up extra obstacles to them and saying, no, actually, we don't want you to?
Thank you, Councillor Friedman. Councillor Binder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be voting for change. I will not be voting for change it back.
Wonderfully succinct. Thank you, Councillor Binder. We've got Councillor Bristow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an issue that's close to my heart, as I had canvassed a man just the night before the election who dutifully turned up with the hope of voting for me, but was sadly turned away as his passport was out of date and he couldn't provide any other ID. I believe that this is overreach from the state. We have conducted many elections prior to this point with no need for ID. It's an assault on our traditional liberties, and putting in extra bureaucracy by making Dacorum Borough Council hand out voter IDs that have to be applied for is just more busy work. I will be supporting this motion as I think it is a ridiculous move by the government.
Thank you, Councillor Bristow. Is there anybody else before I ask Councillor Barry-Mears if she wants to do her seconder speech? It seems there is. So there's Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't sure whether I should press my button. I was a bit scared I might get told off. Just two very quick points. Somebody made a comment about this is common practice in European countries. I think quite a lot of European countries have mandatory ID that you have to have anyway in your course of life, and you have to be able to present that. So therefore it's a different issue in those countries. And I just wanted to say that I think the threat to democracy is far more from things like the shenanigans of Cambridge Analytica and lies on buses than it is about the voter fraud, which we found that there is no evidence for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobson. Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting this motion. I'm horrified, as Councillor Freedman has already pointed out, that some of the comments that are being made from the other side of the chamber. This is not about sentiment. This is about people being able to vote. It is an absolute fundamental right, and it's a disgrace that a bar is being put on people who are already disenfranchised. As Councillor Pringle has pointed out, very often this affects those that are already in a difficult position, carers, young people. It's a disgrace. I'm also appalled at the idea that, as other councillors have mentioned, that it's just a few people that may have been disenfranchised, so that's okay then. It absolutely isn't. One single voter being disenfranchised is a stain on this democracy. I support the motion and will be voting accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members wanting to talk?
Yes, please.
Councillor Patterson, I spotted before, but there'll be time. Councillor England.
I shall be supporting the motion as well. I'm surprised that the members opposite seem to think that it all went very well and it's a jolly good idea. What they don't seem to appreciate is the manipulated way in which central government introduced it. If you've got a senior bus pass, you're okay. If you've got a student bus pass, you're not okay. And even Jacob Rees-Mogg has admitted that it was an attempt to play the system in the Conservatives' favour. And he really let the cat out of the bag. I don't think there's really any case for, there's no evidence whatsoever, maybe one case in the whole of the country all the time that people have been voting. There's been a lot more cases of postal vote fraud, but I don't hear the people opposite being at all concerned about that. Is it possibly because postal voters are more likely to vote Conservative? I think I've probably said enough now, actually, so I shall sit down and support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor England. You need to switch off, Councillor Patterson, thank you.
Pardon? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have done my training on unconscious bias, and I am a zealot for unconscious bias now. We heard in our training that we should always check ourselves for unconscious bias. We must do that. We must do that when motions come before us. And I believe that we are having a bit of a problem with it tonight. I think unless there's evidence that we can know about and look at and that can be shown, we should never let process get in the way of democracy. And there just isn't the evidence. It's not there. It's unconscious bias. And I'm conscious that, this could be unconscious bias on my behalf, but I spoke to 300 or more people on polling day. That means I knocked on a lot of doors. 2/3 of the people were out. Of the people that I did speak to, a significant number were not planning to go and vote because it was too hard, wasn't worth it, they couldn't be bothered. And a big part of that was that they hadn't had the attention span, they hadn't had the purpose to consider this. And I'm afraid that is why this is damaging to the fabric of our society, because we should absolutely be opening the door and saying, yes, come on, vote. We're not going to put any barriers in our way. I don't want to do a summing up speech, but Councillor Hobson nailed it. European countries that you guys are relying on as a fig leaf have a culture of identity cards, and that's why they want identity cards when you go and vote. We don't have a culture we proudly don't have a culture of identity cards. We are a free country. Oh my God, maybe this is why I might have supported Brexit in a multiverse. It would have been because we were a country that didn't have a culture that was like that. There was a question: why shouldn't people be protected? Well, I say, why should people be prevented? There is no evidence for this. It's a massive sledgehammer to crack a nut. I mean, yes, of course, there's evidence for it. It's about 14 people. Come on, people.
Do we have any final speakers to the motion? In which case, Councillor Barry Mears, would you like to do your seconding?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just very quickly like to bring up two things that really concern me that came from somebody on the other side. People will get used to this. Isn't that a very scary sentiment? People will get used to this. Isn't that maybe what people in Nazi Germany thought? Oh, people get used to this. I know, I love that face when you do that, Councillor Williams. Everyone in the room knows someone who at some point hasn't voted for themselves. No, I saw a lot of horrified faces over here and a lot of nodding over there. So perhaps the real problem isn't those who really don't want this in. So maybe the problem is because you know there's a problem because it's you, and that's incredibly concerning. If you think you know someone that's committing voter fraud, maybe report them instead of trying to say everybody knows everyone's doing it, so it's all right. As has been said, this was it was a horrible thing to be implemented because it really affected our young people. Student ID cards weren't allowed. We brought along here saying would we consider to write and ask if student ID could be used because that's free. No, that's not allowed. They've got to pay money. You know who usually doesn't have money? Students, young people who often at 16 leave school. They've got to wait to be off roll from school to get a job sometimes. And then they get to 18, some might be still in school, so they still got to wait to be off roll to get a job. It also affects maybe newly wedded women who have changed their surnames, waiting for their ID to come through. It affects people around my age who maybe got their licenses when they were 16. 10 years later, well, that doesn't look like you. It was just utterly ridiculous. I'm sure all of you don't look the same way you did 10 years ago. I can't believe, as many people have said, there are people that will go against this motion. And for what? No evidence. Because you know someone that's committed voter fraud. Again, you're the problem. I'm disgusted to hear that tonight. I'm really, truly disgusted because it just shows that it's ingrained in certain people and it's not the people you want to stop voting. Voter turnout, it fell. We all saw people turned away. I saw people turned away. Some people came back. They managed to come back with ID. Some people couldn't, because we have people at the minute, when their cost of living crisis, they've used their fuel to get there, they're going to work, they've got another job, they don't have time to vote twice. They barely have time to vote once. They probably haven't afforded to even get a licence. They had to get a passport, because we already know people are choosing between heating and eating. So why are they going to choose to vote for somebody that makes them choose to heat or eat their own homes? It's disgusting. I'm pretty glad I think this motion is going to pass tonight, and I think it shows that we've had the change in administration we've really needed, and this is going to be echoed across the country, because this is really shocking, and sometimes you don't just have to go with what other people think, you can think for yourselves, and we need to show our young people who have been greatly adversely affected by this that you can think for yourselves and do your own thing sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barry Mears. I feel the need to say something. Whilst the thin end of the wedge argument is legitimate, I feel deeply uncomfortable about analogies with the events of Germany in the 1930s, and I think such parallels should be drawn with extreme caution. That having been said, can we now please... Oh, Councillor Pringle, you have the right to close.
Thank you. I'll sum up, thank you. I feel that the passion of Councillor Barry Mears is very much justified, because I know how hard she worked for months encouraging young people to sign up for voter registration. And something to reflect on is student loans, they go up and up. If you turn 18 just after a general election, you might not get to vote until you're 23, long since you've been a student. That portion of our demographic is disenfranchised. And so you have to question the decision, which wouldn't be taken without analysing the consequences, to deprive young people of their vote. And I don't know what to compare it with, but I don't think it's democratic. And if it's not democratic, then it's autocratic. There are many different varieties of autocracy, but none of them is attractive. So I bring you to the actual motion. I'm proud that I make decisions based on evidence. I'm proud that I read things before I talk about them. I'm proud that I apply rational decision-making to my thoughts before I speak. So I don't understand why some of the comments have been made, because if you look at the motion, I worded it, I chose the words because they mean something. And what it says, what it proposes, is simply that we suspend the arrangements, not that we abolish them, but that we suspend them. And that we can have a full inquiry about the proportionality and efficacy. And what that means is, let's have some evidence-based decision-making. And so we can conclude that everyone who's spoken against this is also saying, I don't like evidence. I don't like evidence-based decision-making, because all I'm asking for is the evidence, the full report, and we can put in mitigations. Perhaps we could have a helpline so that our staff are not put in the invidious position of turning people away because they don't look like their passport, or because they shaved off a beard, or wear glasses, or have gone bald. Why are we putting our staff in the position of having to deny people their democratic right? If the government want to bring this in, they should do it properly. They need to have a helpline that's open until 9:59 p.m. on election day, so that a determination can be made using records to enable everyone to vote. And if that costs too much money, then don't bring it in. But the decision should not be to deprive people of their votes. I was really shocked when Councillor Williams said that everyone knows someone who has cheated, who has voted for who is not them. And it would be very easy to say that the Conservatives must move in some very different circles from the people of Northchurch. But I don't believe that was a genuine comment. I think it was worse than that. I don't think Councillor Williams does know anyone who's committed voter fraud, unless he's been reporting them to the police and giving evidence against them.
Sorry, Councillor Pringle, I think you need to be a bit careful about casting doubt on what Councillor Williams...
Well, okay, I will retract that. I'm very grateful for the guidance, because in my head, I cannot believe that anyone here knows people who openly talk about committing voter fraud as if it's normal. And so I think that maybe there is a tendency to, I think maybe there is a tendency to speak ideas that will be taken up as fact. And I think we've seen this before this issue. It's the oldest trick in the book. Everyone talks about it, so it must be true. All I'm asking is to look at the evidence. I am shocked that people believe that it's very easy to have voter ID because everybody's got a passport or a driving licence. This shows people who are out of touch with reality. And I think it's a real shame that people in our community, when we ask them to vote, their eyes are dead. They think, what's the point anyway? Nothing ever changes. What's the point? And to be able to inspire someone like that to change their mind about democracy and come to the ballot box is something I absolutely love and will continue to do. And I will fight for those people's right to vote, because one of the councillors opposite talked about someone else stealing their vote. But with this inadequate, underfunded, ill thought out measure that's been brought in, it is actually the Conservative government who's stealing your vote.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. I will now pass over to Democratic Services to explain how the voting will work, and then ask you, for those in favour of the motion, to vote yes using the system explained.
Okay, so in a moment the vote will display on the screen. On the screen in front of you, you will have the option to vote green for, red against, and yellow abstain. You can cast one vote, but you can change this vote until the vote closes. I'll give you a few minutes to cast your vote. We have counted a head count, so we know how many votes we are expecting. Once your vote has been cast, your vote will be in colour and the other options will be greyed out. My microphone's doing that as well, apparently. So make sure that you are happy with the colour of the vote that is on your screen. So I'll pop it on the screen now. If anyone does need a hand or is unsure, please place your hand up and I can come and help you. We are expecting 3 more votes. We are expecting 1 more vote. Everyone, we're going to close the vote now.
Thank you very much. The motion is approved, 430 against 15. And I assume that the action motioned on will be minuted and the Leader of the Council will be called upon to act accordingly. We have a written question under item 6 from Councillor Hannell to Councillor Wilkie. If Councillor Hannell can please answer the question. I hope I've said your name right. If not, apologies.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question to Councillor Wilkie is this. What percentage of the total housing proposed to be built across the Quorum will be council-owned social housing?
Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Hannell, thank you for your question. As I'm sure you've watched previous councils here, this administration has brought up this issue many, many times. It's something we're incredibly passionate about, and the leader of the council and the deputy leader and many other members have talked about this extensively. To your question, you did set us a bit of a conundrum, because the local plan comes under me, as does affordable housing, but social housing actually does come under my colleague, Councillor Diani. So we know you have supplemental questions. I'll do an initial answer, if I may, and then the supplemental questions will be answered by my colleague. If you don't feel we've answered them properly, please do make us aware.
Mr. Mayor, I do have supplemental questions. For the record, I didn't ask a particular individual to answer this question, so I'll go with my supplemental questions, if that's fine.
Well, we'll see how Councillor Wilkie goes, and we'll make sure that the right person answers the questions as appropriate.
Thank you. Will this administration commit to holding...
Sorry, I think, are we saying that we need Councillor Wilkie to answer the initial question as best she can, and then if you're unhappy with that, then we can move forward. So we'll take your first question and ask Councillor Wilkie to answer that.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Councillor Hannell, we're just trying to make sure that we answer your question as fully as we possibly can. We weren't suggesting anything inappropriate there. So to your first part of your question, so the starting point for seeking any form of affordable housing on a development site is the council's adopted planning policies, and in most cases this is for 35% of new units being proposed on sites of 10 units or more in urban areas and 5 dwellings or more in rural areas. I would refer members to the Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning Document of 2023, Affordable Housing 2013, and the subsequent clarification note to 2022 Affordable Housing SPT clarification note, where changes to government policy introduce some further detail. Future social housing needs will be addressed through the new local plan, underpinned by the most up-to-date evidence of this and other specific needs. The National Planning Policy Framework defines social housing within the wider definition of affordable housing, and it represents a starting point to which future applications will be determined until the new local plan with an up-to-date policy on affordable housing is adopted in due course. While an extremely important consideration for decorum and for this administration, the delivery of social housing therefore needs to be considered in the round with all these other issues. And not least for the ageing population, we need to consider bungalows, for example, starter homes, as well as other key groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there a percentage in that answer? Did I miss it?
Thank you, Mayor. 35%.
Thank you. Councillor Hannell.
Oh, sorry. Goodness, made a good start. Knocked somebody over. Will this administration commit to holding developers to account over social housing build numbers and not allow them to renege on their commitment to complete the building of desperately needed suite of genuinely affordable homes across the borough?
I think that's still with you, Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mayor. The provision of affordable housing is a high priority. Exact numbers on each site will depend on proposals during the planning application stage for each site, and that is our starting point. Where a developer is seeking to provide fewer affordable homes against our council policy, they will have to justify it through a submission of a viability assessment, which we would scrutinise clearly. There may be some occasions where other considerations, such as a specific form of infrastructure, may take precedence. So there has been examples where, for example, a developer has offered to build a residence for assisted living rather than social housing, but it falls under affordable housing. So again, that would be something that we'd have to look at the application stage. I hope that makes sense, Councillor. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Back to you, Councillor Hannell.
Thank you very much for that. I've just got one final supplementary question. Do you agree with me that the current administration would silence a number of objection constituents have with the amount of house building proposed if they provided a large number of genuinely affordable homes with a local connection qualification criteria which would allow their children and grandchildren to be able to stay in decorum and build a life for themselves close to their families?
Now, that's about who is going to occupy the housing. Is that Councillor Diani, or you'll have a go first?
Thank you, Mayor. Forgive me, we had a supplementary follow-up question from you regarding will social housing builder numbers be specified in advance? So forgive me if we've been given the incorrect information, which is why Councillor Diani was going to respond to that.
Mr. Mayor, I was under the impression that I could be nimble with my supplementary questions.
It's a written question.
Yes, I think that's right, but only the first written question needs to be as pre-stated. So does that mean that you'd rather Councillor Diani?
No. If you could repeat your new question, and we'd be happy to answer. Thank you, Councillor.
Do you agree with me that the current administration would silence a substantial number of the objections constituents have with the amount of house building proposed if they provided a large number of genuinely affordable homes with a local connection qualification criteria which will allow their children and grandchildren to be able to stay in decorum and build a life for themselves close to their own family?
Are you happy to take that, Councillor Wilkie?
I am, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for repeating that. I apologise for asking you to. So, yes, I think there is a strong argument for the points you make in terms of allowing larger number of affordable homes, and that local connection, as you know, is already established in social housing. So when you're put onto the list, you already have to provide information that shows that you have a local connection. But certainly I think you have made a valid point, and it's something we could look at in terms of how to progress matters and make sure that local people actually do benefit from the social housing that we build. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Hannell. Thanks you, Councillor Wilkie. So moving on to business from the last council meeting. Is there any outstanding action points from the previous meeting? There are none. Cabinet referrals. Can I please hand over to Councillor Tindall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move 8.1 CA/52/23, 20th of June 2023, the provisional outturn report. Second.
I second that.
Thank you. There are no referrals from overview and scrutiny. Can we have an update from Councillor Tindall about the Constitution Update Report?
If I may, there is a motion before you under item 10, which is to change the Constitution. This earlier on this evening, there was about 30-40 minutes of time that was taken while the portfolio holders read out their reports. This constitutional change is intended to actually mean that in future the reports will be amended to the agenda, so actually members will get the opportunity to see them before the council meeting. So that should not only assist all members in the chamber, but also actually speed up the council meeting. The other constitutional change we have is about the minute taking, which means that the council, cabinet and committee meetings will be recorded, and the recording will be retained and displayed on the council's website and stand on as the record of debate rather than having long written minutes. The final decision will still be confirmed as a written minute. I would like to move the constitutional changes.
I second the motion and welcome the fact that this will improve the experience for our residents.
And is this agreed by the Chamber?
Thank you. If I may move on to item 8, the appointment of the independent person and independent member. The report proposes the appointment of Michael Brown as the council's independent person and Susan Johnson as the independent member. Both roles support the monitoring officer and standards committee with the determination of councillor complaints as explained in the report. The recommended appointments follow an interview process which involved the chairman of the standards committee, Councillor Jonathan Gale, and Mark Brooks, the monitoring officer. The recommendation also proposes to minute the council's gratitude to Susan Johnson, who has served as independent person for the last 4 years and will now switch to the different role of independent member. Are the recommendations in the report agreed?
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. So moving on to outside bodies, there was a report that listed them all. Do we need, given the time, to go through them one by one, or can we just move the report?
If I may, I'd like to, on behalf of all three parties and our two independent members, move the report in as much as the individuals named. We still have a number of vacancies, and I believe there may be one amendment, but I will consult with the other leaders of the other parties to actually determine that. So by September, we should have a complete list. Unfortunately, as we found out only this evening, we're about to nominate someone to an organisation that no longer exists, but that's sometimes the problem. And we will, the three leaders between us will get to the bottom of everything by September.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. Are there any changes to committee memberships? Councillor Tyndall.
If I may, I would like to propose that Councillor Tony Cox fills the vacancy that exists on the Financing and Resources Committee.
And Councillor Williams? Councillor Pesh? None. Any independents? No. Thank you. Changes to committed dates? There are none, and therefore that concludes the business of this evening. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you. Just a point of order, if that's the right way to bring this up. Despite 1 cup of iced coffee and 3 glasses of water, I seem to have been able to hold out. But that wasn't the case for some of our colleagues. I think there was quite a lot of disruption halfway through. So I'm just asking whether perhaps a comfort break after a couple of hours might have been possible. I don't know if that's possible in the past, but anyway, there was tripping up and people moving, and it was a bit disruptive, particularly when people...
We can consider it, but it doesn't seem to work badly that members are able to slip in and out. I think I'm the one that is most at risk of falling foul from it, and Brenda. So thank you, Councillor Hodgson. We can consider it at the next meeting. So I call the meeting to a close. Thank you, everybody. Have a great summer.